disability sector and disabled people?
Okay, we asked you that question. We asked you that question before we went to break about it. Today being International Day for persons living with disabilities, and asking you, what do you think South Africans as a whole are doing enough to promote the rights and well-being of people living with disabilities? But now to take that conversation further, today, as I said, International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and tonight we'll see people with disabilities who have excelled in various fields being honoured by the Office of the Premier in Gauteng. And for the past month, South Africa has been commemorating Disability Rights Awareness Month under the theme Together Building a Disability Inclusive South Africa. But to tell us more about tonight's event, and I was having a chat with him before we came back from break, Zain Bulbulia, thank you so much for coming through to talk to us today.
Thanks a lot, and thanks to the viewers as well.
One of the big issues in terms of disability is access. How do you feel about the fact that when you came through into the SABC today, were you able to access the building comfortably enough?
Well, the biggest problem that we have in South Africa is universal design and access. Truly, this building is not fully accessible for wheelchair users.
Yeah.
For other disabilities, sure, they could get around. But I found it quite difficult from the parking, wheeling right up and coming into studio as well.
So a bit of a mission.
Bit of a mission, but
yeah,
you know, it's things that we need to iron out and work with and get the correct measures in place so that it becomes a free, barrier-free entry for people with disabilities.
And it's a problem across the board, isn't it, in terms of accessing workplaces, accessing health, accessing schools, and so on and so forth.
So South Africa has signed the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities in 2007 and its optional protocol, which is an international tool. But part of that, we have lots of legislations and policies. One of it is the Popuda Act, which can assist people with disabilities to fight the legislation in terms of non-accessibility, but also the rights of people with disabilities. Gauteng, we're making big strides towards it. We're growing Gauteng together with people with disabilities to have an inclusive Gauteng by 2030. We've embarked on a few programs. One of it is universal design.
Is that the 2030 action agenda?
Yes, that is. So one of it is around universal design and access to make Gauteng fully accessible. We've just appointed a team of architects as well as access consultants to have a look at our buildings within government and as well as look at service points. But we want to make sure that transport is available, health services, education, and all of this is available to people with disabilities.
Are there any plans to extend it beyond the public service and into the private space?
Well, we have the laws and regulations. The public space should be fully accessible. It's there. Architects got to be policed. We don't have these inspectors anymore, building inspectors. So we need to look at these things. And when you plan, if you have a plan with people with disabilities, it works out much cheaper than retrofitting a place and breaking down. So why do we not have people inclusive within their citizens in the world?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the first world countries, as Japan and various others, they build in mind with people with disabilities. Why can't we do it here?
Yeah. Let's just quickly talk about tonight, that event taking place. What is it all about?
Well, tonight is the inaugural Disability Rights Excellence Awards under the leadership of Premier David Makura. We're now honouring people with disabilities within the civil society that have done extremely well within the disability sector. I'm not going to give too much because it's the first awards. And
you say it's inaugural, but how do you decide who to honour? And if you're in Gauteng, a person in public service in the Western Cape, for argument's sake, do they not feel excluded?
Well, they are. I had lots of friends on Facebook and lots of friends WhatsApping me to say, why isn't this at other provinces? I think Gauteng, we lead.
Yeah,
we lead
no
by example. And also, we had people to nominate various people with disabilities. So it was an open-ended thing. People got nominated. It went through a process of assessments, adjudicating, and then the process of
I know I'm harping on this, but are the nominees only based in Gauteng?
Yes, they are.
That's problematic.
This is a Gauteng thing. And other provinces have to take by example and see how we do it and follow.
It's commendable, though. It is.
Yes, it is. So, you know, we've got the Department for women, people with disabilities and youth. And I think through that leadership, they should then take it nationally.
Do you agree it's long overdue?
Way overdue. We're 25 years in democracy and we're still leaving people with disabilities out.
Yeah.
If we can fight the 50-50 program for gender equality, why can't we look at disability? We look at 2% employment for people with disabilities. What is 2%?
Yeah.
So within this awards, we're going to definitely see groundbreaking things, game changers, people that have made strides and differences. We have professionals with disabilities, such as doctors and various others. And the program is going to be extremely well. I just hope that SABC captures it and come in and aid as soon as it's done.
Yeah. It's such an encouraging initiative. What are the conversations now? At the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about access to the SABC, and that's one of the longest standing conversation. What are the new conversations about initiatives for the inclusion of people with disabilities?
Well, the most important thing is you're looking at social employment, socio-economic, you're looking at psychosocial things. We learned from the life history bending cases that has happened, and these are learning curves. We need to make things different. You look at education. Today, autism is one of the biggest disabilities which is silent, and we find that there's a lot of young people with autism. And Gauteng is the only province that has already 18 schools dedicated to this.
I'm the mother of a child with Down syndrome, and she goes to a school called Casa de Sol, and I'm always amazed at the things they teach them that allow them to be part of society. But one of the concerns about these kind of schools is that you take children like this to special schools, but when they grow up, there's no special society to go into. They still have to be integrated into the general society. What kind of conversations are being held
this is a brilliant point that you're bringing up, is how do we include people with disabilities within society? How do we work with young people with Down syndrome? How do we integrate them in the society that we have? Is the place fully accessible? Are there employment opportunities? Are there any other career
paths that could be followed?
And sure, you having a child with the Down syndrome, you know what it is. You know what's the struggles. She's going to, or he's
going to. It's actually been a
them
pleasure more than a struggle per day.
No, but I'm saying it's a pleasure. You're doing it out of love and care. But I'm saying for others it would be difficult.
It's different. I acknowledge that.
So the school that your child goes to is a brilliant school. The catering that is around there, the services, the child minders, the extra care with teachers.
And it may not be the same for another child with a similar condition in a different part of the world.
Or in a different part of the world. So what I'm saying is, how do we fully inclusive and bring inclusivity? That's how we're saying by 2030 we shouldn't have these special schools. It should be mainstream, it should be integrated.
So the theme this year of this day is empowerment of people with disabilities for inclusive, equitable and sustainable development as envisaged in the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, and the aim is to leave no one behind. Just unpack this 2030 action plan for us.
So this is a UN theme and we follow the UN. South Africa has signed to its obligations, and therefore we follow it. In terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, is part of disability, or disability is part of the Sustainable Development Goals. We need to ensure by 2030 that South Africa is fully inclusive for everything, from your education to your transport. I'm sure you know what's the struggles with transport.
And 2030 is just around the corner.
2030 is just around the corner. We're almost in 2020. We've got 10 years to go.
Just a decade.
How do we make that change within the 10 years? So within Gauteng, the Premier has tasked these EXCO and he has made them sign a commitment to ensure that disability is on the agenda. So part of their job description, they've signed to a commitment on disability. So we're holding each executive member accountable for non-deliverables on disability issues.
Zain, just to end off our conversation, let me ask you about yourself. How did you end up on a wheelchair? Were you born disabled, or was it as a result of an accident? And how do you find that you're able to interact with your economic life, your social life as a person in a wheelchair?
Well, I think I'm still a young person with a disability. I've only acquired my disability 21 years ago. I got shot, a gunshot. It was an accident, stopping an argument. But my life changed. From being an able body at 30 years old and young and youthful to seeing a life completely different. And I'm saying my disability is my calling. I'm here to make sure and ensure that people with disabilities get their rights looked for. And my hashtag is real rights. Wherever I go to, it's real rights, and definitely to push the agenda on disability.
You're doing an excellent job at it.
We've got to make the government realize what is rights, and it's in our constitution. And I'm willing to work with anyone that really wants to work with disability and do their awareness and activism around disability. We're getting older, we need younger people involved. We need people like you.
One moment you say you're young and the next moment you're getting older. You have to make up your mind, Zain.
I'm
Quick
young.
one. What are those awards called again?
The Gauteng Disability Rights Excellence Awards.
Yeah, that's tonight, and I'm sure we'll be watching out for that. Sure. Thank you so much for talking to us. Zain Bulbulia is from the Gauteng Provincial Office.
Office of the Premier.
The Office of the Premier. And he was telling us about what they're doing for the Day of Persons with Disabilities. As I said earlier, that question where we're asking you if you think we're doing enough. We'll take a look at your thoughts later on the show. Let's take a break for now.